Well, first of all, I mean, student loan forgiveness, it's the debt isn't being forgiven. It's just simply being passed along to someone else. I mean, because you don't forgive debt, you don't just wipe it out, you simply pass the burden on to someone else. Now, of course, before I get into why it's wrong and how it will actually this kind of student loan debt forgiveness will actually manifest itself even if it does come to pass. Let's just get to the uh, constitutional issue here. I mean, it isn't clear cut whether or not uh, the chief executive, being the president, has the authority to cancel debt for anyone. We talk a lot about student loan debt and how massive student loan debt has become, but the fact of the matter is that as far as debt is concerned, the majority of debt that the American citizens as a whole have on its collective back, of course, is their mortgage debt. But no one's talking about forgiving those loans because, of course, the capital market will go out of business, right? And if we don't have lenders, then there is no capital investment, and to cut to the chase, society will, of course, collapse. But the reason why they are um, kind of keen on student loan debt forgiveness is because the left understands and the left realizes that the youth is a major voting contingency. So what they are doing, like many political sort of charlatans and demagogues, individuals, of course, when they coalesce together, they form political parties, and so this is what they do. They're trying to pretty much buy votes. I said this before when I was here when I talked about how this is what the left in particular does when it comes to sort of their form of politics. And this goes all the way back to the days of Tammany Hall. If you all seen the film Gangs of New York, for example, this is what Democrat politicians in the North would do. This was sort of like the political brainchild of men like Martin Van Buren. But what they do is they weaponize um, American politics by convincing a certain group of people that the purpose of government is to be used at their discretion for the purpose of exacting revenge against their political adversaries. And if the people who are in charge or at the helm of the mechanisms of government are there at their behest, well, I mean, that's it. It's just give me the power, the vote for me, and I will make sure that you get what it is you feel as though you deserve. And that is, of course, a recipe for disaster for a multitude of reasons, because a society cannot function in that way ethically, but more importantly, a society cannot function in that way economically. But it's one way that the left tries to, and this is it lends itself to, of course, another sort of issue that was beginning to sort of rear its ugly head uh, over last maybe year or 2 or 3 years or so, when there was talk and there were quiet rumblings about lowering the voting age to 16, because Democrats know, the left knows and understands, and I'm going to try and not say Democrats because, or Republicans or Trump or Biden, even though it's going to become inevitable at some point. But people need to start thinking about the world in ways that are abstract, meaning that when parties go, when people go, there are certain concepts that will be sort of forever swirling in the minds of individuals, because we as human beings here on this planet, we still have to find a way to create a life that is worth living, and one that can function in a relatively healthy manner. So we need to stop thinking about parties and start thinking more about ideas, because ideas are transcendent. But one of the things that the left does, of course, is they know that they can sort of galvanize the youth, because what they preach and what they push are based on nice sounding ideas. I'm trying to remember. There's a famous phrase. I think it was. I'm trying to remember what piece of literature it was, but I believe it was Mephistopheles, which of course is another word for the devil, who once said that instead of looking at things and saying why, I look at things and I say why not. And so, you got, young people who are just looking at the world, and of course, all they see are problems. Okay. Because instead of coming to the realization that the world is a harsh place, a cruel place, it's a cold place, and what you should do as an individual, sort of like what Jordan Peterson says, is find something in life that makes all the suffering worth it. But instead, young people don't want to confront that reality because it's a very frightening. That's a frightening prospect, and so what the left does is they feed your sort of your malignant narcissism, in the sense that everything in the world has to conform to whatever it is you think you are, or whatever it is that you think you deserve. And I think that is sort of like a sort of a default phase in the maturation of a person. And so they think that, of course, that they can, buy the votes of the youth by telling them that they're going to forgive their debt. But of course, that the government is the reason why people are in this sort of quagmire in the first place, because it was the government's involvement in the student loan process that caused the cost of college to outpace the rate of inflation exponentially. And part of the reason is because of the colleges, as opposed to, for example, taking the funds that they bring in and sort of using it to pay competent teachers, professors, or even janitors, the people that keep the hallways clean. What these colleges and universities have done is they have used taxpayer subsidies to increase the size of the administrative bureaucracies at these universities, which your tax dollars are already being used to subsidize these universities, and your tax dollars are going into the pockets of these administrators that are creating an atmosphere and a culture on these college campuses that we are now seeing the young people who go to these institutions, their philosophies, the ideas that they're being taught are now beginning to spill out over into the streets. And now not only is it spilling out over into the streets quite literally, but you're seeing it in every facet of American life right now, not just in the streets with the rabble, but in respectable places, churches and popular entertainment, news media, sports media. You're seeing it everywhere. But the government involvement is why the student loan debt crisis is the way it is in the first place. Because if you have a constant pool and a constant stream of money flowing in, if you're a college or a university, of course, you have no compunction. You don't necessarily care what it is that you do with the responsibilities that you have, if as long as you have a constant flow of money coming in, not just the people who run these institutions, but the student body and the enrollees themselves. And so, we saw after World War II, there was this sort of explosion in college enrollment, and you began to see this deflation of the value of a college degree, because now all of a sudden part of the acquiring the American dream was, of course, you had to go to college, and this was the sort of the big selling point in the 1940s, 1950s, going into the 1960s, and we saw 2 decades of this taking place. And then all of a sudden in the 1960s, for all of you who may not be aware, that the turbulence that we saw in the 1960s was not merely a result of the United States and its discriminatory policies. A lot of it had to do with what was going on the American university, because a lot of these revolutionary movements, if not all of them, did not begin as working class movements. They began on the college campus. And so when you have the intelligentsia at the university working hand in hand with the state, they want people to go into these institutions because these are the revolutionaries of tomorrow. And of course, like I said, they're passing the buck on to the taxpayer. I mean, even though, I mean, we talk about too the rate of useless degrees and all this stuff, and this is what happened as a result of the uh, the value deflation of a college degree, because all these new major studies and things were popping up all over the place. And I'll kind of double back and get back to that in a second. But even in spite of all of that, the numbers still bear out that the person who does have a 4-year degree from a major university, I can't remember the exact number, but throughout their lifetime, they make more money than a college graduate on average. So once again, sort of like I said prior, we're seeing a massive transfer of wealth going into the pockets of people who are going to go on to work in careers where they're going to earn more money over the course of their lifetime than someone who never attended college in the first place. So there you have it. And that's just sort of like the economics of it, aside from the cultural ramifications and this whole idea, this notion that you deserve something or something is owed to you because of the decisions that you made. It's not fair. It's not my fault. I was told that I needed to go to college in order to be successful, and then here I am with this useless degree, and there's a mountain of debt piling up on my back, and the only job that I can go out and find is one that's going to pay me $40,000-$50,000 a year. Well, of course, you didn't go and you didn't study science, technology, engineering, and math. You got a degree. I was checking out my man's and them, Jay and Dane podcast, talked about, I think it was modern dance or something they made a reference to, but therein lies the problem. And here's where we really, really get into the meat of it, because once upon a time, things like dance and art, these are considered, when you get a degree in these fields, you're getting not a bachelor's in science, for example, you're getting a bachelor in the arts. But receiving a bachelor's or an education in the liberal arts once upon a time was a tool or something that was given to the citizens so that they could learn of their inheritance and their rights and their duties as members, sort of of the collective. This goes all the way back to classical Greece when we talk about ethics and reason and logic and philosophy and these various things. And this is today, the sort of modern day manifestations of those particular fields of study that we sort of put inside this sort of box that we call the liberal arts. But as sort of society began to, as modernity sort of like began to kick in, I want to say around the mid 19th century, when you had the ideas of great inventors and entrepreneurs, made it a lot easier for people to sort of make a living for themselves who are not, in fact, studious, for example. Because once upon a time, things like, hell, man, reading, we're talking, people fail to realize that this is a relatively new phenomenon for even the majority of human beings on the face of the planet to even be literate. For the longest period of time, most people couldn't read and write. This is fairly new. Sitting back and studying philosophy, when you're reading the great works, the Iliad and the Odyssey, you're reading Homer, and you're reading these great epic tales. That people didn't typically do that unless they were nobility, or they were well off, or they were people of privilege. So going back to when I was talking about the industrial revolution, right, and these kinds of things like the arts became polluted. They became tainted, because right around the mid 19th century, beginning with Karl Marx, and then shortly after that, Charles Darwin, you sort of saw this kind of this two-headed kind of snake, if you will, that really did a lot of damage that we still haven't fully recovered from, not just in the West, but the world over. Um, the concept and the notion of liberalism sort of began to change. It began to grow away from what the great John Locke or what Thomas Jefferson spoke about. It began to grow into something else, where as human beings, since we were in fact uh, discovering new things, since we were for the first time, when we're talking, think about electricity, railroads, uh, steam engines, all these things. These were fairly new things, and for the first time in a very long time, that people who would normally be poor, and I'm talking, you mean, you think that, oh, you ride through the hood in the D and you seeing blight and you seeing, all sorts of things. You think that's poverty. Now, you don't understand poverty till you understand what poverty was like centuries before, you were even thought of. Totally different ball game. And for the first time, things began to change. And so what that meant for the concept of liberalism is that, oh, we as human beings, see, we got a little bit too big for our britches, and in our hubris, we thought that we could solve the world's problems through kind of sort of human fortitude, right? And the whole concept of liberalism began to change from sort of liberating yourself from the tyranny of a monarch to liberating yourself from the past, thus liberating yourself from suffering, liberating yourself from things that make you uncomfortable, liberating yourself from disease and hunger and everything else. And that's just not reality. That's just not possible. And so, but the people who believe that, the social engineers, they would become these kind of folks. Um, the soft sciences, the liberal arts, that became their wheelhouse, and so those fields became occupied primarily with the people who thought that they had the right ideas. See, it didn't matter what they were able to produce, because the people who actually produce things that other human beings actually weren't the ones who were studying these, philosophies and the writings of these so-called important people. And so as time began to go on, the people who began to specialize in the soft sciences left college and went into fields not where they produced things of value and things of worth. They specialized in the creation of ideas. And they went into fields where their ideas could be utilized, right, for the purpose of these glorious ends that they envision. But all the while, remember, they are playing with real life flesh and blood people with their ideas. And so people who specialize in the soft sciences, oftentimes they go into politics. They go into social work. You ever notice all these people, they're either sociologists, psychologists, social workers, political science majors, criminal justice majors. All these degrees mean absolutely nothing. Nothing at all. But those are where all of your charlatans and all your demagogues come from. This is why the university and the state as it is are one and the same. The state does the bidding of the university does the bidding of the state, because they work hand in hand. Because essentially, remember, what we are and who we are as a people, and the wisdom that we've acquired over centuries, that is passed down from generation to generation, is what gives us the know-how when it comes to creating a fully functioning society. We have the knowledge, not the select few. So the more and more we could depend upon ourselves to govern ourselves based upon our own inheritance, that wisdom that we've inherited from our forebears, the less and less important they become. But remember, they are the ones who need to control the mechanisms of, of the government and other institutions that can compel or can make your life extremely hard, you know, by pulling the strings and doing certain things, of course, because you don't have the requisite knowledge to be in control over your own life. And so this is why, going back full circle, while the left is so keen, they want everyone going into college, they want to make it as easy as they possibly can. Because the people that go into college are the people who want to come out and not do real work. They just want to tell others who do real work that what they're doing is either hurting the environment. It's you know, if you go out and you because mind you, remember the whole point of, especially now, the educational experience, and they're just trying to put it all in a nutshell, because this is this entire historical trajectory that I'm talking about. The very point of an education is to awaken a working class consciousness. Remember, we talk a lot about this term woke. This is where the term woke comes from, is to awaken a collective consciousness. Adolf Hitler was awakening an Aryan consciousness. In China, during the Cultural Revolution, there was something called, or during the communist revolution in China, we talk all this shit about white privilege. There was a thing that, you know, there are certain groups of Chinese people, some of you may not know that, but the dominant group in China at the time were a group of people called the Huns, or the Hans, I can't remember exactly how you pronounce it, but there was a such thing called Han privilege that they talked about, that they wanted to sort of overthrow. Because when you are a success, whether you go to college or whether you don't go to college, simply by way of you participating in the society, you are participating in something that is inherently unjust. Therefore, you have become a co-conspirator. So the purpose of the college graduate is to seize the reins of power, to correct the wrongs of the society based upon what they've been indoctrinated to believe while they were in college. And what this does essentially is it gives more power to the government. You know, make college unaffordable. Fuck it, I don't want to go. You know, I can't afford that shit. I don't want the debt. I don't want, because all of these stupid ideas is where this shit is coming from. I got news for all of you out there, especially all you black folks who scamper around. And I see you on your social medias and all that shit, this thing called a black Twitter, whatever the fuck that's supposed to be. You all think that these ideas that you're spewing are ideas that that manifested itself or manifested themselves amongst the sort of working class, oppressed, struggling blacks within America. But you'd be, if you knew the actual history, you'd be surprised to believe that the things that you hold dear are things that were taught to you by people who were, in fact, the elites. So you're working on behalf of the powers that be. You just don't know it. You just don't know it. And you black men, you running around and you're thinking that you're being, tough and you think that you are the sort of an exemplar of masculinity, when you know nothing could be further from the truth.